Today, we're going to be hearing from Grainne Oates, creator of a gamified learning platform for use on mobile devices called Quitch. Grainne's been talking to us about it, and it's a really interesting story, how it was conceived in the context of a student environment. And we'll also hear about how Quitch was used by the KIOSC team, the Knox Innovation Opportunity and Sustainability Centre in 2020. So we also welcome Leanne and Kulari from KIOSC. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Grainne and Kulari, and please take it away. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathan, and great to be here, and welcome along, everybody. We're looking forward to your questions, and it's great to be here with Kulari and Leanne from KIOSC, and also thanks to Nathan and Kev for organising this. So as Nathan said, my name is Grainne Oates. I'm the founder of Quitch, and I'm also an academic at Swinburne University, which is where this idea was originally conceived a few years back. I teach first year accounting, and you may or may not know, but it can be a very difficult subject for a lot of students, and the world over has issues with, high dropout rates, low retention and so on, and high failure rates. So we were essentially looking for a way that I could engage the students and to do that though outside of the classroom, because while students were in the classroom, we could engage them and do lots of interesting things. But then once they left that classroom, they kind of disappeared on us. And we wanted to essentially work out a way that we could improve the success of the students. So Quitch was actually co-designed with students, which, if I'm perfectly honest, I think is a large part of its success. Then you just ask 500 18-year-olds what they think, and they will have no problem telling you, I can guarantee you. So very much focused, and I'll talk about that a little later, but very much focused on the student voice in the solution, against, of course, with educators as well. So Quitch is, as I said, it's mobile. It can be used across any discipline because you pour your own content into it, gives real-time feedback to the students, a lot of fun. They talk about learning without even feeling that they are learning. So lots of excitement around learning for them. So Nathan, I might just move to that next slide if you like. And at this point, I'd like to talk a little bit perhaps about how Kulari and I came about. And Kulari actually worked at Swinburne University a few years back, and she was in the Learning Transformation Unit, and she'll tell you a little bit about that. But in terms of Quitch itself, we talk about that positive reinforcement loop. So it's really about the students getting that real-time feedback on how they're performing. This was something they said. They wanted to identify what were their own areas of difficulty, what did they need to focus on in real time. And also that ability to, they said, can we have fun while we're learning? And I thought, I don't think anybody could argue with that concept. And so they talked about the fact that they really enjoyed playing games on their mobile phone, and in fact they talked about getting distracted by that, which I think we probably know. So I thought, well, we can take what currently distracts them and in fact use that to engage them by adding those elements of gamification. There's also then a leaderboard and points and so on, so they can compete against one another. But interestingly enough, when we ran our focus groups, it was very much focused, I should say, there was very different feedback from the males and the females, and the males were very keen to compete with one another and get to the top of that board, if you like. And the girls actually talked about not wanting to be identified, but competing against themselves. It was really very different what the two groups wanted. So what we do is we create, you might be a purple wombat or a pink kangaroo or something on that leaderboard. So it adds a bit of a fun element to it as well. So it's essentially about reinforcing and consolidating the primary learning. So what I might do, Kulari, I might hand over to you at this point and perhaps talk a little bit about how we came across one another and your story. So I'll pause there for now.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, we met when I was at Learning Transformation some time ago at Swinburne. And the whole idea was to start innovative way of keeping students engaged, at the same time for the teacher to see how they are progressing. So there were two components, I think, Grainne, is that right? So one is students are motivated in a different way rather than, okay, you need to do these exercises, give me the answers, all that. Two, okay, who is doing and how are they performing? So that was the initial thought, and Swinburne at that time had seed grants, and this came about as an idea of the grant, and then we got started. So at that time when you started, we had students telling about it, we had staff looking at it and giving feedback and coming together. So it didn't stop me from there, because after being at Learning Transformation, I moved to Monash, and Tiff might be able to tell. I was at Monash College, and we took the idea to Monash College to use it with Monash College students. They're international students mainly, and for them to be able to compete against each other in a non-threatening way, not knowing whom they are competing, but just climbing up the leaderboard, and to be without realizing they were learning certain things. And like a little cloud on the side, the teacher could see who is doing how many times, where are they struggling. That analytics behind the whole application was gold for all the teachers. So that's how we came about. And then this time around, as Amazon Web Services is part of our partners, we were put together again in 2020 when we were going through these very challenging times to think how we could get our partner school VCE students engaged in something that kept them going, motivated. So that's how currently we are going ahead with using Quitch with our partner schools here in Knox area. Over to you, Grainne.
Okay, thanks so much, Kulari. And yes, just I guess expanding on Kulari's comment there about the analytics for the educator as well. So in terms of when we were designing this as educators, we thought there's really two key things we want to focus on. We want to focus on performance, and that's, you know, performance of your content in real time. So I wanted, and the other educators, we wanted to be able to see as a cohort or as a group, what areas are your students really struggling with? And the idea here is like which topics and so on, so that you can actually identify, know those in real time, and then know which areas to focus on and change your dynamic plan, lesson plan accordingly. So you're focusing on student needs rather than, you know, my pre-planned delivery of material. And so what I actually discovered, and I know Tiff, one of your colleagues at Monash, had the same conversation with me, we discovered very quickly, in fact, that we were focusing too much on areas that students had understood very quickly, and they'd probably fallen asleep on me, some literally. And others, of course, we could see that there was 60–80% of students were not understanding that particular topic. So really what that did was that obviously it had a huge impact on the outcome of results at the end of semester, because now we were able to focus in real time on what those areas of difficulty, as I say, the cohort had. So that was the performance of content, if you like. The other thing in terms of performance we wanted to focus on, as Kulari alerted you to, was the individual student. So in my situation in the university sector, we could have 1,000 students in a theatre, or you're delivering to, and really until those students do that first kind of significant piece of assessment, which is usually about halfway through the semester at week 6, you really don't know how they're doing. And I just didn't really want to live with this. I thought it seems morally wrong. I felt like these students are like sitting there and I'm not understanding what they know or what they don't know. So I wanted to be able to identify in real time which students were at risk. So at risk, we identify those through our algorithm as those who, if they're attempting the material, but they're getting less than 50% right. Now I can do this on day 1 of my course, week 1, whenever I push those questions out. And what it allows me to do is then through the announcement function on Quitch, get a notification to their mobile phone. Now I don't identify them obviously to themselves at risk, but what I do is I tell them I'm running some additional workshops. We have some peers you can talk to and support you and so on. So the idea is, because we know, of course, from research that the earlier we intervene and support, the much greater chance of success we have. So what we actually found in the first peer-reviewed published paper on Quitch was that those who used it regularly had on average a grade 7% higher than those that didn't use it. We actually more recently, we've been working with educators and students since then, and some of the more recent studies from earlier this year show 16% improvement in one subject, 22 in another, 14 in another. So, and I think this comes from us working very closely with educators and students in terms of what are some of the things that they're missing, what are some of the additional elements that they would like. And perhaps, Tiff, you can talk to some of this later. So just in summary then, it was really the educators are challenged with that lack of engagement, that low visibility on the analytics, and of course, too late with data. So we wanted to turn these things around. Then the students, what they were wanting was easily accessible, interactive tools. They wanted to have fun, get that immediate feedback. Because when I talked to the students about the data analytics that I was collecting as an educator, they asked a great question. I thought they said, well, what about us? Why can't we get our own analytics on how we're doing? So we've added a lot more analytics into Quitch since then. And that gives them, this personalized journey that they're enjoying. So perhaps at that point, would like Leanne or Kulari, I'll hand it back to you, and perhaps you could talk about your KIOSC Quitch experience. It's a hard one to say. So I'll hand over to you, Leanne.
Yep, that's fine. Hi everyone, my name's Leanne. I'm in a really unique working environment at the moment. I think you all are. We at KIOSC, we're run by Swinburne University and we're staffed by Swinburne University, but I actually work for Department of Education. So I kind of sit in the middle of things. So I'm very much the link, the umbilical cord to schools. And I think it's really important that when COVID hit, we really tried to reach out to our schools to see how we could best support the student learning BCE area. So Quitch is actually designed for Year 12. It is designed for a range of different subjects, the science subjects, and there is business management, food technologies, PE, and health. I think I got all those, Grainne. And it's a really kind of interesting platform. So as a Year 12 teacher, and Grainne mentioned this before, we try and do a lot of formative assessment with the students. So if you're in class, you'll be asking questions and you'll be getting feedback, and that will inform your teaching. And then that will inform the differentiation processes that you go through to get the kids up to the level that they need to be. What Quitch was allowing them to do was online, because let's remember now we're in COVID, the schools are locked down, the students are now at home. Teachers didn't really have the ability in class to chat to the kids to get their level of understanding of where they were at. So Quitch was the platform that we as a STEM centre could actually provide to a range of teachers. At KIOSC, we have 6 partner schools in the local Knox area. And so what we did, we held a professional learning session to explain what Quitch is, so that it's an online app-based platform where each week the kids will get a set of questions, probably 10 questions, you can change it, and they can open up their phone, they can click on the app, they'll get an alert to say, hey, you've got biology questions ready, and they can go in, and it takes them about 2 minutes to answer the questions. Most of the questions are multiple choice, but as a teacher, if you want, you can add in the bank of questions. So I'm assuming that most of you have used a program like Kahoot, and you've spent hours and hours compiling those questions for Kahoot. With Quitch, the thing that really attracted us was that the questions were already done, and the questions were based on previous exam questions, and the people that have written those questions are retired teachers, past examiners. So it was kind of very rich content. And what we found was each week the kids would log in. Some of them had multiple subjects. If you're a science kid, you might be doing biology, maths and chem. Not maths, biology, physics and chem. So you might have 6 minutes of homework to do, which is very taxing for a Year 12 student. But the thing that we found was it's fun. And what the kids were doing, they weren't only competing against each other, because they got to earn these really cool little badges. Or you might be on a streak. Let's face it, how many of us like to play some of our little online games? And if you're on a streak, it's a little win. And that's the gamification process in place. It's the release of the endorphins, you know, you wanting to keep going because you want to get them all right. And you really are bad when you get something wrong. And when you break that streak, that's disheartening that you couldn't answer that question. So we found that the badges were very much engaging. And we also asked the teachers to play against the kids. Now, what we told the teachers was all the answers are there for you. You just need to look in the back end of the system and you can find the answers. But how cool would it be, particularly as Grainne pointed out, with some of the boys? Can you imagine a PE class where the teacher is now competing against those kids in a PE class? And some of the teachers on purpose would get questions wrong. So they're no longer on top of the leaderboard. The bragging rights, the gloating that was going on amongst all of these very beefy boys, let's be honest, was very, very engaging, and it was very rich learning for the teachers. So what we really found was that it was formative feedback that was really quick and instant, and you can go into the data analytics and it's all graphed for you. You can have a very quick glance as a teacher, and this was at one of our big things. Teachers were already overloaded in COVID, so we didn't want them to have to then sort through copious amounts of data. We wanted a visual snapshot, and what we started doing at KIOSC was taking that data ourselves and literally just compiling it for the teachers. So they didn't have to worry about trying to log into a new system, learn a new system. It's not that hard anyway, but we know that teachers were very time poor, and eventually they kind of you know, we did some more professional learning with them in half-an-hour sessions, because that's all that we were taking with them. And we got them skilled up on using the data dashboard themselves, the analytics. And they go in, they look at the graph, they go, oh, Grainne again, you know, she's not doing well with her questions. Now I can target her learning. So what they would do in Teams, if they're communicating online in Teams, it might be a private conversation. You know, Grainne, noticed that you're really struggling with this concept. You know, I want you to go through the textbook and reread parts A, B, and C, and then I'll come back to you and chat and we'll debrief on it. And then you can go back in and do those Quitch questions again for that week. So it's not just a one-off thing. They can go and revisit and do them as many times as possible. The questions don't come up in the same order. So, for example, if you had two kids sitting next to each other, they would get a different set of questions. So it's not like they can cheat. Well, they could, but they would have to wait for the next one to get the right question up. So, you know, we wanted a program that was easy to use for the kids. And, you know, there was a lot of worry about, you know, they would say, Leanne, you haven't told the kids how to download the app. And I'm like, they're 18. If they don't know how to download an app from the Play Store or from Apple, then I don't know how they got to Year 12 in this technological age. And the kids were actually driving it in the end. You know, more kids were on than teachers. And then it was like a guilt trip for the teachers to get in to look at the data and see how the kids were going. Now that we're in the last week of school for Year 12s, which is scary and exciting, the kids can continue to go back into the Quitch. And so you could have, what I would love to see is that, you know, when the physics exam is on, for example, you could have kids standing outside the exam room going through their Quitch questions on their phone before they head into the exams. So, you know, it wasn't all easy to begin with. We had quite a few little hiccups along the way, you know, logistical things that we had to sort out. When you bring technology into 6 schools, which is over 6,000 students, you know, you've got over 500 teachers all trying to get on a platform and all trying to be on the same page. You have to be patient with these things. And, you know, next year, you know, this has been a great year of learning for us as well. Next year will only prove how well we've done in the training this year, and those teachers should be able to pick it up and run with it from the very beginning of the year. So we've had really good success, and we've had a lot of fails in it as well, but we've worked really hard to try and overcome some of those really tricky sticking points, particularly with some very old school teachers who aren't very tech savvy. But the thing that we had each school had their own account. And the thing that has really kind of struck with us at the moment, and a few of you will just be finishing off this process, there's the really huge moderation process that's now happening with Year 12s, particularly this week, where I think it's all due. And you've had to go through moderation of maybe all of the PE classes, and then you've had to rank the kids, and then you've got some statistical errors where you might know that some kids have had COVID in their family, so they've had reduced kind of learning, so their scores might be bumped up to their indicative grades and things like that. Quitch has been able to provide that kind of linear ranking platform. And so at a glance, the schools can see where the kids actually all line up. And then that helps with the moderation process in terms of how they can put the special considerations in for all of the Year 12s, which has been a massive effort, I know, for lots of schools leading up to that. And so that's just another way that, you know, normally as a teacher, your class, you can kind of rank your kids, but, you know, you have to share all that ranking with the other biology classes that are in the school as well. And Quitch actually helps provide that moderation process because the cohort's ranked, or the subject is already ranked within the school. So you can actually pick where those kids are at. So it has been a really large effort. It's been worthwhile. It is something that we would definitely pick up again next year. And in the haste to get it up and running, we'll probably do a better delivery of getting all of the schools and all of the teachers on board and spending a bit more time with them rather than the, you know, kind of very Band-Aid reaction that we had to try and immediately help them. But it's been a good experience, and, you know, we do have good feedback from it. Not all kids and not all teachers have engaged with it, but, you know, that's an individual kind of teacher, what they want to do with their class. All we've tried to do is really augment the student learning and help the teachers as best we can in this kind of very tricky environment that we've had this year. So, Grainne?
Leanne, thank you so much for that great detail and explaining how it all got organised and went about. You did a phenomenal job in a short period of time, I've got to tell you, considering, yes, 6 schools, all those teachers, all those students. So actually, I want to say well done to you. But Leanne, just picking up on a few points that you raised there, I think that's a really important one about the revision right up until the exams, and it's something about the feedback that we got as well. So once the students, you know, play the game as they refer to it, and can test themselves, the great thing is that they can go back and practice that 1,000 times if that's what it takes. So if it takes me 10 times longer than Leanne, nobody needs to know about it. I can, you know, work on it in my own time, but until I master those skills, and it can let me know when I've mastered them. And so it's built very much around that growth mindset. So the idea is that you continue to work towards it and continue to excel. One of the other things, Leanne, you talked about as well was that individual performance of the student. So I think that's a really important one. So you can see very clearly exactly how many questions a student answered, you know, which ones they got correct, incorrect. You can take everything down to that actual level. So you see how many points, badges, and so on they've earned. So it's a really powerful tool if you're concerned about the student. And as I said, we identify those who are at risk and so on. So you can see very clearly the ones that you need to kind of worry about. I never, and none of us, I think, ever worry about those who are at the top of the leaderboard. You know, they'll always get into their learning and make the most of every resource available. But we're more concerned about those at risk, or those who we refer to as not participated, meaning they haven't really answered any questions at all. So also it gives us a chance to identify them. In terms of, you talked as well, Leanne, about the 9 subjects that are available. So this, I just want to point out, is through a partnership with Quitch and Access Education. So as Leanne said, this is retired teachers and so on, or previous examiners who have actually written these questions. So those 9 subjects, and that's what Leanne and her team, that's what they purchased, so that their teachers, as she said, didn't have to create anything, everything was available. If, on the other hand, you wanted to create something yourself, you do also have the option to do that. So just going back then for a moment, I guess, just to talk about that solution, if you like, we clearly identified what those issues and problems were. And so then what was the solution that we had to build? So the very first thing the students said was that the solution, it had to be mobile, which I think was very interesting. And, you know, because they talked about learning management systems and other systems that they have, they said they've got to log into the laptop. They don't always have a laptop with them, but they always have their mobile phone. And I think we probably can all vouch for that. And we all have our mobile phone. So I thought, okay, we can do that. The other important feature, I think, with Quitch is that the students also talked about when they went into their system and so on and looked at the materials, there was often nothing new from when they had previously been there. And this kind of wasted their time, they told me. So I thought that was an interesting point, and they didn't really, therefore they would at times, they would just look a few times, nothing new, and then they would kind of give up. So I thought we can actually, again, we can fix that problem by actually notifying them when some new material has been unlocked. So what Leanne and Kulari did was they would unlock the material week by week for the students. So each time new content was unlocked, the student would get a notification on their mobile phone saying, welcome to biology, new material has been unlocked. And the student would then know to go in straight away and start answering those questions. So I think that's another important feature. We talk about the gamification, as Leanne said. We talked about that immediate feedback, identifying your areas of difficulty as a student, but also getting notification when there's something for you to do. Okay, so I actually personally thought the announcements might get really annoying after a while, the notifications, I should say, but actually the students told me that that was my age was the problem. They said that they love getting notified and that's how they like to function. So they're probably, I'm sure they're right, they know themselves. So essentially that whole solution, if you like, it was built around improving performance of the students and that around that student success. And we do that, as I mentioned, through educating them. So it's about, remember, reinforcement of that primary learning and consolidation of that primary learning. It's not trying to replace what the teachers are doing. It's a companion to that. It's about that knowledge retention, knowledge acquisition. We do that in this kind of fun, engaging way. And they get those, the student gets the report straight away on their performance, but also you as the teacher gets that immediate feedback on the cohort as well as on the individual performance of your students. One of the other things you had mentioned, Leanne, was, yes, setting it up for different teachers. And you're absolutely right. Not every teacher is going to want to use it. Not every student, of course, is going to want to use it either. And I think that's important. And obviously, everyone has to work out what works for them. So what we generally do is, you know, we can run a demo for people and so on, and then they can determine very quickly whether it's actually going to work for them, if that solution is going to work. But what I would encourage you to do in the last kind of few minutes that we have and so on, is to actually, you can download Quitch yourselves from the App Store, and we've got a little content marketplace that we've recently opened up, and that will give you an opportunity to actually interact with it, and you would actually essentially get that student experience. So there's a number of year 12 subjects in there. There's also, you can learn about Australian history, if you like, or anatomy and physiology or medical terminology. There's a whole range of kind of fun things in there, as well as there's a quiz on introducing you to Quitch. We can test your knowledge on that after today's session. So at this point, Kulari, would you like me to hand back to you, or Leanne perhaps to speak a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm happy to tell what we did. So KIOSC operates with Teaching and Learning Committee. So before we went about, Nathan, if we get to a couple of more slides further down, I think it's nice to show what KIOSC looks like. So this is what our building looks like here in Waterna. So we do have a Teaching and Learning Committee. So before we do a lot of things, we go to the Teaching and Learning Committee and test the waters. So we did go to the Teaching and Learning Committee and check what the representatives from each of our partner schools wanted to do. Will they want to have something like this, or would they not want to have anything of this nature? And like Leanne mentioned, one of the biggest attractive points was that they didn't have to create the questions. I still remember, if we have to create the questions, we don't want it. If you are going to give the questions, yes, we are happy to use it. So that was a real winner, having that Quitch and access that partnership and being able to use the questions that's already developed. And those questions, what we did was we made sure that bare minimum for the teachers. So we asked them, do you want 6 questions, 7 questions per week, or do you want lots of learning outcomes covered during the week? Do you want it Monday and Friday? All that, how to release. We didn't open up all the badges. There are quite a lot of nice badges, but we did open up a good enough number, I think, to keep going, including as you log in to have a badge. So welcome type of badge. So asking all these questions from the Teaching and Learning Committee and getting their buy-in was important for us. And then, like Leanne said, we worked with Grainne and her team to implement it. So we have 6 schools and we have separate schools implemented and for each subject, for the 9 subjects. And then we conducted short half an hour professional learning sessions so that they could get an idea. What we did actually, we got them to play the games. So we got the teachers to be students and play the games so that you get a first-hand experience. So if you haven't played Quitch, I think you should download and play it now. So that's where we are at. And we will be, there were certain schools that were really taking it on board, promoting it as a method of revising. So some schools did take it really seriously, certain teachers. Some schools took it in a different way. So it's all about, how the teachers felt and what they were feeling. But the teachers who did take it on board did say, especially not being able to see the students face to face, this has been a great resource for them to see how they're doing. And also it's like a game, right? So you don't feel that you are stuck inside the house, can't go anywhere, can't do anything. Now you have to study. Yeah, study, but you play the game. You don't realize you're studying. So that's our journey so far. Grainne?
Yeah, thanks, Kulari. And it's always a pleasure working with you guys. And I think too, one of the nice things was, I think when Kulari and I spoke early, was about, kind of local supporting local. And we're a Victorian EdTech company, and we really like the fact that, the Department of Education is the education state. And in fact, we were successful in winning a significant grant, which allowed us to adapt the technology for the vet sector as well. And we worked with Swinburne, GoTAFE and Gippsland TAFE in that area as well. So really kind of interesting and exciting as we've got a 70%, almost 70% female workforce in STEM, I should say as well, which is great. And we've also now rolled the product out internationally. We have delivered Quitch in 7 different languages, and we have partners in the US, Brazil, New Zealand, and Europe. So lots kind of going on with us. I think one of the key things, and this is one of the great things about working with people like Kulari and Leanne as well, who have that strong background in education, and they continue like ourselves to get feedback from students. And I think it's really important that when we build these solutions, as I said, that we get the student voice, we get the teacher voice in it, because who's better placed to build these solutions than the teacher and the students who know exactly what those problems are that they face. And I think that's a really important thing. And I think we continue to do that very well. This is one of the great things about still, teaching myself at Swinburne and having access to the students who, continue to give feedback, what's working, what improvements would they like, what would actually, excel them in their success and their journey. So they were just some of the other things I guess I wanted to add. But Nathan, you may have, I'm not sure if we have any questions in the chat that you would like us to answer at this point. I haven't kept an eye on that, I'm afraid. So Nathan, will we come back to you for the moment?
Yes, one question came through. Janine was interested in the costs and a list of subjects. I'm assuming that's the subjects that have got already questions built in. Are you able to give any info on that from the team?
Sure, yeah. So with the program that KIOSC and so on, so for those 9 subjects, so we had a flat fee of $2,000, and that was with unlimited students.
Cool, yeah. I encourage anyone, if you do have any other questions as we go on, please feel free to ask those in the chat. Yeah, otherwise we'll continue on. Thanks, team.
Yeah. Okay.
I wonder whether Tiff had things to add, because I would love to hear their experience as well.
So I think Jeanette asked what would you...
There we go.
no,
Hey. Yeah, I guess I can add. I use Quitch. I feel like this is a meeting. I'm like, yeah, I've been a Quitch addict for 4 years now. And I've actually used it in quite a broad range of things. So I started off by using Quitch in very much the same environment that everyone else has talked about. So I used it for my class. I teach at Monash University. I wanted a different way of reaching out to my students. I was already using gamified stuff within the classroom, but I found the administration of actually having a gamified environment was insane. It was so much work on my end. So I reached out to Grainne and their team, and they went, yeah, we have this app. There's an app for this. It's going to make it amazing. And I shifted everything that I was doing from the gamification side onto the app. And it was just so much easier than trying to do all of that myself with like physical badges and physical leaderboards. Having it all built into the app, having it all automated just meant that I could spend more time actually doing things in the classroom, doing more things with the students, and actually adding in more content because it was available for their phone. So I'd have things like, yeah, you can ask all the questions in there, but if they had a case study they needed to work on, you can pop that in. If there's a YouTube video I wanted them to watch, I could pop that into the app. And they were actually doing that content as they were on the train on the way into classes. So that was really fantastic. So that's one of the ways that I've used the app. The other one is a new program that we've just started running, and Grainne and her team have been like largely indispensable at helping me get this one off of the ground. But we're also using the app now as a student support and engagement mechanism for students that are likely to be at risk and likely to be disengaged with their studies. So we're trying a completely new way of using the app. It's not connected to anything academic. It's actually created an entirely new platform for doing things like asking them questions and checking in on them and kind of doing a high-tech, low-touch mentorship program using the app. And I just wanted to add as well, I know I put this in the chat, but the team has been really fantastic at asking for feedback in terms of how things are going and taking that feedback and actually creating different things in the app that I needed to make the program run more smoothly. So that's been fantastic. So if you're interested in trying out the app, definitely would recommend giving it a go because the team is really great to work with. And then that's it for me, unless there's any questions.
I think I need to add there too, because it's been a partnership. So if we found something, actually, is this question really right? We were able to go back and it was, oh yeah, that's right. That's this year's way of writing the question. Or, oh yeah, actually we can change that, and that's been changed. So that type of partnership has been really valuable. And I am a strong believer in that type of partnership because it's for the good of everyone. It's a win-win situation. So we provide feedback, and with Quitch and Access Education being able to adapt so quickly has been great for us.
And thanks, Kulari. And Tiff, yeah, thank you so much. And Tiff, I mean, I think one of the additional things I would add about Tiff is that she's a great innovator and is renowned as being such. And yeah, I just love the way that you suddenly created this, area around the mental health and well-being of students, especially under the conditions that they were under. And you turned that around so quickly. And it was no questions, just a phenomenal job. So yeah, well done to you too, Tiff. So I mean, it's a pleasure, as Kulari said. I mean, there's very much a look at this as partnerships, and I think the only way we can continue to improve things for students is, as Kulari and Tiff said, take on board that feedback. And again, who's better placed to tell us what needs to be improved than the users themselves. So I think that's really important, that we all continue on that journey and keep the student voice at front of mind, if you like. So I think it's critically important. So pleasure working with you, ladies, I must say.
There's a few questions in the chat about the data end from Janine. Nathan or Kev, whoever's controlling the PowerPoint, do you want to go to the next slide and you can see what the data dashboard looks like? So Grainne, do you want to answer those questions for Janine?
Sure. So, so Janine, where am I? I'm missing the chat. Okay, here we go. Yep. So sorry, bear with me. So where is Janine?
They're good questions, Janine. I don't play much with the back end anymore, so I'm a little bit out of practice, but Grainne is very skilled.
We know Janine and trust Janine. She's actually on our committee. So I'm just wondering, Janine, feel free to open your mic and ask your questions. That might be easiest. So.
Yeah, I'm happy to, if that's easier.
Sure,
I guess, so I'm a digital technologies teacher. This looks quite interesting because I am a passionate fan of gamification, but for me, the problem's always been around the gimmick as opposed to the learning value, which I think you've already answered quite nicely. But in terms of the actual logistics of how to actually set this up from scratch, if I was to look at it for my school or my situation, I know there are some other kind of apps that do same but different. And I'm curious as to who owns the intellectual property of the content that's created. So if you're working in partnerships with schools, is it school that owns the content and then can add, delete, change and everything as required? Or do you prefer the model where you're actually rolling that content and you're working with partners to establish that content and bring it in under your own banner, firstly?
Yeah, Janine, yeah, great question. No, Janine, you would own that IP. So there's the two different options, if you like. So if you wanted to set Quitch up with your own content for your own students and so on, you can very easily do that and you would own the IP. So we're GDPR compliant and I can share, license agreements you can review and so on if you so wish. But yeah that IP is all yours, Jeanette. Yeah, Janine, I should say, beg your pardon.
That's all right. Secondly, I'm a technologist that loves dealing with big data. And I'm just wondering how easy it is to upload, download content. So looking at what types of technologies or tools that you're allowed to create the content. Firstly, is it as simple as just mocking something up in a Word document or putting it into an Excel document and uploading? And can you upload and download in batch? So if I wanted to create a unit of work are there templates that I could use, or is it a case of do I have to do things individually, or can I say put a unit of work together and upload it and then fiddle around with it while it's there?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so what you can do, we've got a CSV bulk upload document, Janine. So you would load all of your material in there, including your YouTube clips and your resources and so on as well. And you do a bulk upload and then you simply drag and drop it into your sections and topics. So really easy for you to upload it. And in terms of download, what you can do is you can actually download the content then in a Word document, if you like, to review it, and so that you can edit it and so on going forward for, let's say, for the next year, or, if you want to just get a few people to review it for you. The other thing, you bulk upload your students as well. We also have a CSV file for that. It's literally you bulk upload, press import, and they get an invitation to their school email address. In terms of the downloads, yes, you can download all of the data for every individual question, every student's performance and so on, and that gets downloaded to a CSV file. So it gives you information around, for example, on average, how long it's taking students to answer a question, how much time they're spending in the app itself, and gives you all of that data for all of your different subjects and so on. So if you want to do, for example, your own research, and as academics and educators, we like doing that. And so you've got all of that data that you can use to do some more kind of deep diving.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I am a data junkie, so that would be something that I would love to play around with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it works similar functionality to standard Microsoft Forms, where you can get some of the analytics in about which questions were done well, poorly, how long it took students, and get the overall picture that way. Can you bring up, so I can't quite see the screen of information, but can you look at the data and slice it from a class and a student level?
Yes, you can. And
okay,
you can download, yeah, Janine, you can download all of that, gets downloaded to a CSV, I beg your pardon, as well. Yeah, down to the student level and question level, sorry.
No, I appreciate, sorry, I'm thinking off the top of my head. So interested, would you as a teacher then be only able to access the information that's relevant to your class, or can you actually set it up so that the teachers could look at it from a holistic or system perspective around a student. So even if you had data about another subject, it gives you a little bit of a different picture about the student than perhaps just looking in silo with one subject.
Yes, you can. So again, let's say, for example, you know, you had 3 different classes. You as the educator, you can add as many educators to that particular class as you like, Janine. Yes.
But then could you look at another educator's data and then have a holistic picture of the student based on all the classes that they have in this tool, or would it still just be your own data for your own students?
So that would be entirely up to the school. So if the school...
So it's customizable.
Yes, if the school decided they wanted to share that data across the teachers, very easy for them to do so by you just simply adding that person, allocating them to the class, and then they've got access to that data.
Great, I understand all of that. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Nice to talk to you, Jeanette.
Folks, I just noticed that we're heading past the 4:45 mark. So, but I know we've got a couple other questions that have come through from Alex. So we might wrap up the formal part of the webinar, and then Alex, if you'd like to stick around, I'm sure Grainne and Kulari will be happy to look at your questions. Thanks.
And I'd just like to thank everyone who's participated. Leanne, I love the real life stuff. That was it added a real flavour for me. So, and Kulari and Grainne, that delighted to hear you deliver your webinar about Quitch. I know it's a great product, and that's why we're very keen to engage with you. So, thank you again for your time and efforts.
Thanks so much, Kev.
You're welcome.